The year is 1987, and American TV networks launch a number of short-lived shows, such as Starman, The Popcorn Kid, and Probe. In a fit of midlife nostalgia and an effort to remind the world of shows they have forgotten, lone podcast pilot Chris Cooling steps into the Forgotten TV studio 30 years later. What's happening?
Oh no. Unauthorized broadcast detected. This transmission contains classified Humanidyne materials. All listeners are now being tracked via IP address. Remain where you are. Cease broadcast immediately. Prepare for full spectrum scrub.
Let's not do that.
Buckaroo, we're picking up suppression signal on Elephant Bravo band.
Forgotten TV, we've got you. They're trying to shut you down before you finish transmission. That usually means you're on to something. Lockout overridden. You are operating under alpha clearance. Forgotten TV, you are cleared to resume.
From well-remembered to obscure TV memories of the 70s and 80s, including short-lived TV shows and made-for-TV movies, this is Forgotten TV. You're listening to Forgotten TV. I am your host, Chris Cooling. This is an independent transmission, listener-supported, and obviously operating outside official channels. If you'd like to support the continued declassification of 70s, 80s TV, you can do so through Patreon or PayPal and become a producer of the program. Or if you prefer something simpler, you can buy me a coffee. No enrollment required. This episode of Forgotten TV was executive produced by Joshua Driscoll, Doc Pinko, K.L. Young, Kenny Siegel, Tony Cook, James Bellinger, and new executive producer Leland Duggar. You can also support Forgotten TV using the affiliate links found on the website and in the show notes, or by accessing the new merch store, where additional materials are made available to the public. And to everyone supporting the show, thank you for helping keep the signal alive. The year was 1985. Science ruled the multiplex with rapid-fire film releases that defined the summer. It began with Back to the Future, the biggest film of the year, where a teenager, a DeLorean, and a wild-eyed scientist turned time travel into pure pop mythology. Just 2 weeks later came Explorers, a more wide-eyed, youthful take on Discovery, where suburban kids build a homemade spacecraft and answer a call from beyond the stars. Then came Weird Science, which is what you get when two teenage hacker wannabes connect a government mainframe to their Barbie doll, and lightning does the rest, creating the perfect woman.
What would you little maniacs like to do first?
My Science Project, where high school gearhead Michael stumbles onto a mysterious alien device in an Air Force Base boneyard, accidentally unleashing time distortions, prehistoric creatures, and Cold War paranoia into their suburban gymnasium. And Real Genius, where the brilliant misfits of Pacific Tech are focused on laser research, government contracts, and dorm room pranks.
Stop playing with yourself.
Culminating in one of the most satisfying acts of scientific rebellion ever put to film. Yes, pop culture was saturated with lab coats, lasers, and youthful experimentation gone sideways. And in a kind of cinematic synchronicity, all of these films, developed independently across different studios, somehow arrived within the same 5-week window that summer. as if the culture itself had decided that science was about to get weird. But before all of that, in the summer of 1984, 2 months after Ghostbusters, there was another film, a cult classic sleeper I saw on a Tuesday dollar night at the old downtown theater, based off an oddball trailer that just showed the actors strutting out into the dry Los Angeles River for an entire minute. The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension.
Buckaroo, President's on line 1, calling about is everything okay with the alien spacecraft from Planet 10, or should he just go ahead and destroy Russia?
Tell him yes on 1 and no on 2.
Presented in the spirit of pulp heroes like Doc Savage, Buckaroo Banzai is a neurosurgeon, a jet pilot, a rock and roll frontman, and the leader of Team Banzai, a group of specialists each at the top of their field. They all operate out of the Banzai Institute for Biomedical Engineering and Strategic Information, a non-political, non-profit think tank where science isn't just theoretical, it's applied. Sometimes absurdly, but always with confidence. One day they're testing interdimensional travel. The next, they're developing a genetically engineered watermelon capable of surviving a 300,000 psi impact, so it can be airdropped into famine-stricken regions. Juicy and vitamin-packed. Just another Team Banzai solution to cut through all the unnecessary crap and help people help themselves. And if that sounds a little strange, that's the point. Because in the world of Buckaroo Banzai, the science is always working, even when you don't quite understand it. And on Friday nights in the fall of 1985, NBC tried something very similar.
That's me, Dr. Billy Hayes, and I'm looking for a few good heroes who know how to have a good time.
Excuse me, would you happen to be seeking representation?
Like my friend Elvin. Now, he's a brilliant scientist, but boy, can he get down. From 7 feet to 7 inches, and he can go where no man has gone before. Then there's Beast. Now, he doesn't make a very good first impression, but this dude is so cool that he can freeze everything he touches. Now, Gloria is really just a sweet kid, but she can do anything she puts her mind to. Hold it! She's got powers that'll make your head spin. And then there's Johnny B. Now, he used to be a rock and roll star, but now he attracts electricity. Oh, he's got more juice in him than O.J. Simpson. And when he cuts loose, he'll just blow you away.
Together, these Misfits of Science will make an unbeatable team. And with Billy at the wheel, they're out to save the world and have a blast. The Misfits of Science, Fridays this fall.
NBC was looking for a new show to follow hit series Knight Rider, now the lead-in on Fridays. NBC executive Brandon Tartikoff had described it as a kickback Friday night kind of show. Offbeat, not too serious, and maybe even a little irreverent. Something that could capture a bit of Ghostbusters energy and fit into the Friday night television landscape. If you're thinking something similar had been tried before, in this very time slot, you'd be right. Tartikoff had previously slotted his high-profile flop, Manimal, here at 8 p.m. Central. While we'll fully cover this in the behind-the-scenes segment, basically what happened is a general concept was taken to Universal and handed off to James D. Perriott, who you might remember as the creator of Voyagers, for full series development. Even he was unsure of the idea, but what emerged was a show unmistakably steeped in the pop culture, music, and tone of 1985. And an unlikely hybrid, part action-adventure, part sci-fi comedy, and probably part something else too, because this version of Science at Work came wrapped in a sort of institutional corporate structure. At the center of the series is Humanidyne, a massive industrial and technology conglomerate. Think Raytheon or General Dynamics, described with no small amount of pride as the largest defense contractor in the United States. Their slogan, Science to help the human condition, which almost sounds like a threat. Now, there's no record that Humanidyne ever produced an official promotional film. But if they had, if a company like that needed to introduce itself to new employees to explain who they were, what they stood for, and what exactly they were doing inside those walls. It might have sounded something like this.
August 15th, 1984. Groundbreaking ceremonies at Humanidyne Incorporated laboratories. Machine shops, test sites, research facilities at the cutting edge of modern science. No expense has been spared in the creation of the world's most advanced scientific center. At the helm, Humanidyne Chief Executive, Dr. James Strickland.
There is no doubt in my mind that Humanidyne is an idea whose time has come. We have at our disposal the greatest scientific minds of the century. People from all over the world will come here to have our scientists solve their scientific problems.
Today, Humanidyne stands as a mighty pillar at the apex of world science. With each ingenious solution, with each shining new creation, it grows ever stronger. And with your help, the help of the Humanidyne employee, its story will go on to become the largest defense contractor in the United States, delivering solutions wherever they are required. With every discovery, with every breakthrough, we fulfill our promise. Science to help the human condition. We can do it. We will do it.
While the company spans countless divisions, the focus of Misfits of Science would be much smaller and much stranger. Inside Humanidyne operates the good guys at the Human Investigation Team, or HIT, a loose collection of misfits, geniuses, and anomalies tasked with solving the problems no one else can. Their unofficial motto, Weird are Us. With that in mind, let's get into our pilot telefilm, Deep Freeze, airing October 4th, 1985. For those watching along at home, I viewed an upscaled and color-corrected version, complete with original music, link in the show notes. The film opens not like a superhero adventure, but like a horror movie. Utility workers Gomez and Stinker enter a dark warehouse to investigate a mysterious power drain on the electrical grid. Inside, they discover a coffin-like freezer. When it opens, they are introduced to a very frozen and very blue man named Arnold Beefneater, who awakens screaming for Amelia. Moments later, a 1964 Cadillac ambulance with police escort speeds Beefneater to Humanidyne, specifically to the Human Investigation Team, led by Dr. Billy Hayes, played by Dean Paul Martin, who never passes up an opportunity to help someone in need. Working alongside him is Dr. Elvin L. Lincoln, actor Kevin Peter Hall, a 7'4", mild-mannered scientist, an all-around decent human being. They discover that Beefneater, nicknamed Beef, was born in 1900 and cryogenically frozen at age 37, using a system intended for billionaire Howard Hubert. Beef possesses the ability to freeze anything he touches and must periodically return to deep freeze to survive. Mentally, however, he's not all there, repeatedly crying out for Amelia, likely referencing Amelia Earhart, whose disappearance was major news during his lifetime. And he develops a very specific fascination with frozen Snickers bars. But when military figures including General Thiel and Humanidyne Administrator Dr. Strickland learn of Beef's abilities, they seize control of him and announce plans to shut down HIT entirely. Meanwhile, L reveals the deeply personal origin of his research into human growth. Growing up in Watts, his height brought endless pressure to pursue basketball. Lacking talent for the sport, he instead devoted himself to biological research. Attempting to shrink to average height, he developed a serum that overshot dramatically. L can now reduce himself to 11 inches tall by triggering a neurological reflex at the back of his neck. The effect lasts exactly 14 minutes and can only be used once per hour. Billy and Elle also discuss other powered individuals they have deliberately concealed from military oversight, which include Johnny B. Bukowski, played by Mark Thomas Miller, a musician capable of shooting lightning bolts and sprinting at superhuman speed when electrically charged, and Gloria Dinallo, a young Courtney Cox, a teenage girl with telekinetic abilities. Over on the darker side of Humanidyne, warmongers Thiel and Strickland are planning to sell a dangerous neutron beam weapon to the military, one that may trigger catastrophic chain reactions with global consequences. When kindly scientist Dr. Momquist, affectionately called Dr. Mom, discovers their plans, Thiel and Strickland attempt to eliminate him by putting him on ice using Beef's abilities. That's when Billy and Elle step in. They recruit Johnny B. and Gloria, commandeer an ice cream truck for Beef's mobile cold storage, and storm Humanidyne's military division. Along for the ride is Jane Miller, played by Jennifer Holmes, Gloria's probation officer and Billy's something. It's complicated. Donning matching Misfits of Science basketball uniforms, repurposed from a hit intramural team Billy once organized, the group battles an army company and frees Beef and Dr. Mom. When news of the neutron beam project leaks, global protests erupt. The Misfits appear publicly at the military facility housing the project as the news media converges, becoming instant media sensations. Their battle against Thiel's army dramatically reveals to the world that the neutron beam is no longer theoretical, when a crazed General Thiel loads it onto a helicopter and begins firing it. This climax plays out live on television, watched by Elle's old basketball friends from Watts, Hayes' mother and friends at the beauty shop, the staff at the county juvenile correctional facility that was all too familiar with Gloria as a troublemaker, and pretty much everyone else on Earth. In a moment of improbable inspiration, Billy Hayes tosses a helmet into the helicopter blades, a once-in-a-lifetime basketball shot, destabilizing the craft. Thiel misfires the weapon, vaporizing the helicopter, himself, and the neutron beam weapon. The world rejoices. The Misfits are heroes. The closing credits feature a montage of fictional magazine covers celebrating the team. And in a final meta tag, Miss Nance, Humanidyne's secretary, oblivious to the world-saving events while watching Days of Our Lives on a pocket TV, switches off her set, places it in her purse, and exits the room, bidding goodnight to Elle's test rabbits.
Good night, bunnies.
Notable guest operatives. Diane Savita, now known as Diane Carey, was Miss Nance, who would continue to appear in episodes, always going on break or to lunch. You might recall she played Harmony, Willie's girlfriend on V, and Annie Oakley on Voyagers. She was, and still is, married to James Perriott. Eric Christmas was Dr. Mom, kindly old scientist that ran Humanidyne before Dr. Strickland took over. Speaking of Strickland, that's Edward Winter, bringing just the right amount of smug authority as Humanidyne's currently and clearly more amoral administrator. Kenneth Mars appears as Senator Donner, initially eager to greenlight the neutron beam weapon, right up until he realizes it already exists. Larry Linville was General Thiel, the blustering, cigar-chomping warmonger who wanted the power of the neutron beam, no matter the cost. And Mickey Jones was Arnold Beefneater, the frozen blue guy. Billy and Elle called his power Contact Temperature Transference, or CTT. Unfortunately, thinking the character had limited potential in an already crowded cast, producers chose not to have Jones return for series episodes. There's a long circulating online claim that Marvel Comics objected to the similarity between Beefneater and their character of Iceman, who had recently appeared on NBC's Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. Although often repeated, I never found any original source backing this up. Several elements here appear to be intentional nods to Ghostbusters, including the magazine covers, as well as the 1964 Cadillac ambulance used by HIT, contrasting with the 1959 Cadillac used in Ghostbusters. The ice tunnel used in the climax of the film was a Universal Studios attraction, originally themed as the Glacier Avalanche, later rethemed multiple times before its demolition in 2013. It had appeared on The $6 Million Man, Knight Rider, and The A-Team. Audio Surveillance Log. The music of Misfits of Science was part of the show's DNA, and in 1985, that meant real songs. She Blinded Me with Science by Thomas Dolby. Heard over the opening credits, a number 5 hit in 1982, and about as on the nose as a theme song can get. Johnny Be Good, performed a cappella by Mark Thomas Miller in character. Originally a number 8 hit for Chuck Berry in 1958, and a perfect fit for Johnny B. Teamwork by David Lasley, from the 1984 film Body Rock. The Second Time by Kim Wilde, a number 29 hit in 1984. And Feels Like Science, performed by Karen Lawrence, written by Basil Polidouris and Steve Schiff for the closing credits. This would, of course, become the opening theme for the show. The soundtrack firmly roots the pilot in its era and creates exactly the kind of music rights nightmare that's kept this show buried for decades. A full list of all songs used in each subsequent episode is found in the episode write-ups at Patreon. Episode 2, Your Place or Mayan. Air date October 18th, 1985. After a brief interruption for American League Championship Baseball, Misfits of Science returned with its second episode 2 weeks after the pilot telefilm, with an episode teaser followed by the first official show opening. The episode wastes no time diving into an action-packed adventure. The Misfits are thrust into an archaeological mystery when their old friend, Dr. Morton Augenblicht, dies at Billy and Elle's doorstep. He carries with him a cryptic ancient Mayan map. Researching the map leads them to 16-year-old graffiti artist Angel, who possesses the mysterious ability of genetic memory. Angel can read and understand ancient Mayan culture and language, a gift he has never studied, but is possibly inherited through his DNA. With Angel guiding the way, the Misfits embark on an adventure reminiscent of Raiders of the Lost Ark, complete with hidden treasure beneath a Beverly Hills building set for demolition. But, as expected, they aren't the only ones after the Mayan treasure. A dangerous businessman, Stouffer, traps the team in the treasure room, and they must use their unique powers to escape. This episode also introduces Dick Stepmeyer, played by actor Max Wright, the new administrator at Humanidyne, who's tasked with keeping things running smoothly. Stepmeyer is the kind of bureaucratic figure who's always worried about reports and procedures, but beneath the administrative bluster, he turns out to be a decent guy. Episode written by Donald Todd, who served as story editor on the show. He was also a writer on the 1985 Twilight Zone, Alf, and Dave's World, before shifting more into producing on such series as Camp Wilder, Caroline in the City, Ugly Betty, Samantha Who, Heart of Dixie, This Is Us, and Resident Alien. Directed by Alan J. Levi, who was also supervising producer on the show. Notable guest operatives. Dean Devlin as Angel. 23 at the time of filming, Devlin would later become a powerhouse in Hollywood, co-writing and producing blockbusters like Stargate, Independence Day, and Godzilla. Bob Larkin, who lived from 1929 to 2021, was Dr. Morton Augenblicht, or Augie. A character actor with over 80 IMDb credits, Larkin also worked as a professional photographer and video engineer later in his life, if IMDb credits are to be trusted. Nicholas Horman as Stouffer. An accomplished stage actor, Horman appeared in over 70 film and TV roles, including narrating audiobooks.
Supplemental observations.
Gloria delivers lunch from the Burger Barn, where she now works, a location that will become a recurring setting throughout the series. This marks an attempt by Gloria to lead a normal life, which contrasts with her telekinetic abilities, which she is at this point reluctant to use. Side note, recall that Alice from WizKids also worked at a Burger Barn. This episode introduces what I call the weirdo of the week in the hit lobby, waiting to be seen by Miss Nance's desk. This week, it's a man literally smoking as he waits to be seen, with Billy suggesting they get him an ashtray. This would become a recurring comic bit in future episodes. Here, our first regular series episode seems to highlight some storyline discrepancies between the telefilm and this story. While the Misfits were worldwide heroes at the end of Deep Freeze, this episode brings them back to their roots as run-of-the-mill employees at Humanidyne, raising some questions about just what may have happened between the two stories. No explanations are ever given as to what happened to Dr. Strickland, Dr. Mom, or Arnold Beefneater. The production code 60803 suggests that this was among the first 3 episodes to be filmed. The producers obviously got the word early enough that this would be the first aired episode, as dialogue was written in clearly introducing the Dick Stepmeyer character. Episode 3, Guess What's Coming to Dinner? Air date October 25th, 1985. Harry, part-time inventor and brilliant yet chronically overlooked lab assistant at Humanidyne, assembles a makeshift transmitter in his garage using discarded company equipment. Convinced he has established contact with extraterrestrials, Harry becomes increasingly obsessed with his breakthrough. But when military personnel arrive to confiscate his equipment, the Misfits intervene and soon discover that what Harry believes to be alien communication may have far more terrestrial and dangerous implications. An invitation to dinner escalates the situation dramatically, leading to a nighttime cornfield rendezvous, a secret missile launch, and possible treason charges for the team. Meanwhile, Jane is revealed to be secretly pregnant by her husband, from whom she is separated. She struggles with how to break the news to Billy, with whom she maintains a relationship that defies easy categorization. On again, off again? Friends with benefits? In 1985, it didn't have a Facebook status, but it was still complicated. Written by Maury Ravinsky, also a producer on the show, he is credited with 4 Misfits episodes. He also contributed 9 episodes of Highlander, directed by Burt Brinkerhoff.
Notable guest operatives.
James Sloyan as Harry, a prolific character actor who popped up everywhere from Wonder Woman and Buck Rogers to seemingly every major 1980s series, and who also appeared as multiple characters across the Star Trek shows of the 1980s and 90s. Janice Kent was Judy, Harry's wife, likely best remembered as Mary Ellen Cleaver on the new Leave It to Beaver. Gary Riley was Josh, Harry's son. He played the kid who Johnny B helps reconnect with his father. Riley is probably best known for the 1987 film Summer School, and Tom Bauer, who lived from 1938 to 2024 as Jeffries, the military commander overseeing the Mother Goose missile program. He was a highly prolific actor with over 180 credits spanning roughly 5 decades.
Supplemental observations.
The episode title, Guess What's Coming to Dinner, echoes the 1967 film Guess Who's Coming to Dinner, and has been reused in numerous television series over the decades, a testament to its adaptability as a cultural riff. The pregnancy storyline was written in after actress Jennifer Holmes became pregnant by the time the show got picked up for series. Unfortunately, this development contributed to Holmes' early departure from the show, although she was kept on the opening credits for the duration of the series. This episode also features the first appearance of a recurring visual gag, the two unnamed lab rats. These are usually the same two background extras, one tall and balding, the other slightly older with a full gray beard, repeatedly seen participating in bizarre experimental setups throughout the series. Often silent and unexplained, their presence becomes a subtle running joke. An anonymous crew member once noted on the Science of Misfits blog that assistant directors deliberately reused the same two unnamed extras in lab scenes as a running joke. The story here leans heavily into Cold War anxiety, blending alien contact tropes with automated missile launch paranoia. Ultimately, Harry isn't communicating with extraterrestrials, he's interacting with a computer controlling a classified missile program. The parallels to 1983's War Games are unmistakable. In that film, the military entrusted nuclear launch decisions to the Whopper supercomputer when it was found that human officers in missile silos hesitated when given the command to launch. Whopper had no such hesitation, as it failed to distinguish simulation from reality. But what just a few years ago felt like science fiction now edges closer to plausibility. 3 major AI language models, including GPT 5.2, Claude Sonnet 4, and Gemini 3 Flash, were recently pitted against each other in simulated geopolitical war games involving border disputes, resource scarcity, and regime survival scenarios. Across 21 simulated games and 329 decision cycles, the models chose to deploy nuclear weapons in 95% of these scenarios. As James Johnston of the University of Aberdeen observed,
"It's possible that the problem goes beyond the absence of emotion. More fundamentally, AI models may not understand stakes the way humans do."
In 1985, this was a high-concept sci-fi cautionary tale. Now, 40 years later, it feels uncomfortably prescient. Fortunately, nobody is giving a chatbot the keys to missile silos. Yet. Episode 4, Lost Link, air date November 1st, 1985. A jungle man from a remote Philippine island wanders onto Venice Beach searching for the mysterious Shunda. With no prior exposure to the modern world, he is initially brought to the human investigation team at Humanidyne before being transferred to Dr. Comac's anthropology habitat at the local university, where he is placed under the care of Dr. Deanna Walter. The man, dubbed Link, speaks no known language, but through the universal medium of music, Johnny B establishes a connection with him. Lunch at the Burger Barn quickly escalates when Link becomes lost in Hollywood, giving us a great comedic fish-out-of-water segment. But later, the show takes a turn into something far more emotional. Through mime and gesture, Link reveals his story. The carved doll he carries represents the soul of his young son, who drowned while Link was distracted. When a World Geographic magazine featuring the space shuttle later washed ashore on his island, Link interpreted it as a divine sign. He believes the shuttle will carry his son's soul heavenward, or at least toward whatever afterlife his people envision. The mission becomes clear. The Misfits must help Link place his totem aboard the space shuttle before launch. Meanwhile, in the B story, Elle works up the courage to ask Dr. Walter on a date. Written by Mark Jones, directed by Christopher Leach. Mark Jones built a career writing for numerous 70s-80s TV series, including The Fall Guy, The Powers of Matthew Starr, Riptide, The A-Team, Knight Rider, and The Highwayman. He later wrote and directed the horror films Leprechaun and Rumpelstiltskin. Notable guest operatives: Jesse Deason as Link, a character actor with nearly 50 film and TV credits spanning 1972 to 2017, including a semi-regular role on the first season of Operation Petticoat, 1977. Stephanie Faulkner as Dr. Deanna Walter, known primarily for genre appearances including Fantasy Island, The Greatest American Hero, V, The Philadelphia Experiment, and Howling 5, The Rebirth. And Billy Greenbush as Major Lager, the officer overseeing shuttle Discovery at Edwards Air Force Base. A familiar face across 70s and 80s TV, and father of actor Clay Greenbush and twin daughters Lindsay and Sydney Greenbush, who played Carrie Ingalls on Little House on the Prairie. Supplemental observations. Dick Stepmeyer continues his weekly ritual of cost complaints and bureaucratic concerns. This time, it's the $143 Billy and Elle spent on business cards reading Doctors Hayes and Lincoln, Purveyors of Very Weird Science. A clear wink at the 1985 hit film. The episode keeps up the fake magazines with World Geographic, an obvious stand-in for National Geographic, whose space shuttle cover ignites Link's spiritual mission. In the closing scene, we also have the blink and you miss it, uncredited return of K.C. Winkler as Donna, another love interest for Billy Hayes. This episode also debuts a new stylistic flourish, a montage of action and comedic clips interspersed during the closing credits, sometimes featuring alternate or extended takes. This is the strongest episode yet, and a return to the core formula established in the pilot telefilm. The Misfits standing up to institutional authority on behalf of an underdog, complete with car chases and B-Man zapping military vehicles.
What the? Don't shoot! They're the Misfits of Science!
While there were certainly some fun here, Link's personal tragedy gives the episode emotional weight. His interpretation of the space shuttle as a spiritual vessel may tap into something culturally specific to the late 70s, early 80s. For many young people of that era, the shuttle symbolized humanity's hopeful future in space exploration. We will return to this later. Link's ultimate fate is left ambiguous, with the episode suggesting the Misfits return him to the ocean, allowing him to attempt the impossibly long 7,300-mile journey home by raft. A voyage that in reality would require months of favorable winds, provisions, and navigation skills. But this is television, and suspension of disbelief is required. We also get a great bit with Dick Stepmeyer siding with the Misfits, helping to restrain Dr. Comac so Link can be transported to Edwards Air Force Base before launch. A great moment of character development for Dick. Episode 5, Sort of Looking for Gina. Air date November 8th, 1985. Johnny B becomes distracted by a mysterious young woman who appears at his rehearsals and just as quickly vanishes. Meanwhile, Dick Stepmeyer convinces the hit team to investigate reports of mole men beneath a museum where Humanidyne is sponsoring a $30 million treasure exhibit recovered from the sunken vessel Antoinette. Rather than subterranean humanoids, they discover an unconscious runaway boy hiding in the tunnels. The mystery deepens when Johnny's disappearing woman, Gina, is revealed to be part of a small community of unhoused young people living beneath the museum. Their presence threatens the scheme of treasure exhibitor Al Bucher, who plans to stage an explosion as a diversion, steal the treasure, and collect the insurance payout. The Misfits must stop him before Bucher detonates his distraction. In the B story, Humanidyne employees compete to sell tickets to the company picnic, with a trip to Hawaii as the prize. Written by Michael Cassett, Maury Ravinsky, and James D. Perriott. Directed by Jeffrey Hayden. Cassett also wrote for the 1985 Twilight Zone and Max Headroom, and later produced series such as Erie, Indiana, Strange Luck, 7 Days, and Z Nation. Notable guest operatives: Rhonda Aldrich as Gina, a familiar 80s-90s television guest actor. Michael Halsley, who lived from 1946 to 2017 as Al Bucher. 75 credits on IMDb, much of it of the sci-fi horror genre. And Mars Callahan as Zach, the runaway boy living in the tunnels. This was the first credit for this former child actor who made the rounds on 80s TV before directing films, including Pool Hall Junkies in 2002 and What Love Is in 2007. Supplemental observations. The episode title nods to the 1985 film Desperately Seeking Susan, and Aldrich is clearly styled to evoke a mid-80s Madonna, complete with curls, scarves, and layered accessories. The original script title was Subterranean Homesick Blues. Rhonda Aldrich later recalled, "It was a very fun show to work on. The episode was a takeoff on Desperately Seeking Susan. I would go in when they wanted somebody to play a Madonna-like character. And that's what my career sort of was during that point in time." That quote is from Misfits of Science and Oral History, which is where the majority of quotes in this segment originate. While the initial scenes beneath the museum do briefly evoke that Ghostbusters-style vibe Brandon Tartikoff was looking for, with the Misfits showing up to investigate weirdness, the rest of the episode falls flat, with what was a fairly standard heist plot with a Scooby-Doo style reveal, lacking any real Misfits hook to the story. With minimal rewriting, this story could have aired on nearly any mid-80s action-adventure series. You could have clearly envisioned the Riptide guys here, for example, which even makes me wonder, given the multi-writer credit, if this was a repurposed script from another show. Episode 6, Sonar, and Yet So Far. Air date November 15th, 1985. Elle receives a distress call from his friend Eddie at the Ocean Center after a sensationalized article in the National Tattler threatens funding for Eddie's research on an intelligent dolphin named Donald. Billy and Elle attempt damage control with Sherry of the Delta Foundation, unaware she is secretly working with crooked nightclub owner Chuck. Their plan? To use Donald's sonar abilities to locate sunken cocaine shipments offshore. The Misfits respond the only way they know how, by stealing the dolphin and staging a Miami Vice-style sting at the corrupt Flamingo Club. Unfortunately, Billy and Elle are no Crockett and Tubbs. The B story, Gloria seeks guidance in developing more control over her telekinetic abilities, but Billy dismisses her concerns. In a surprising convergence of storylines, Glow ultimately saves the day, having obviously been working on her abilities on her own. Written by Donald Todd, directed by Burt Brinkerhoff. Notable guest operatives: Gary Frank as Eddie, best known as Willie Lawrence on Family, with extensive 80s and 90s guest appearances. Sondra Curry as Sherry, a familiar face across 70s, 80s TV, later appearing as the mother of Zach Galifianakis' character in the Hangover films, also known for performing her own stunts. Robert Donovan as Chuck, a prolific character actor with 130-plus film and television credits. Supplemental observations. Jennifer Holmes had already exited the series by this point in the production, making this the first episode filmed without Jane Miller. No on-screen explanation is ever provided for her absence. They do make an effort to reference her in dialogue a couple of times going forward, but apart from that, the character is no more. Miss Nance displays an unusual burst of productivity here, obsessively dusting throughout the episode, a detail not present in the script I found, which only mentions her reading a paperback. This suggests the behavior may have been an actor-driven choice by Diane Savita, or direction given during filming. This was a marked improvement over the previous episode. The dolphin communication concept had surfaced in earlier 80s television, including WizKids' The Sufi Project, and would later appear prominently in both Dolphin Cove and Sequest DSV, where Darwin the Dolphin became a core character. The official print ad description, however, was somewhat inaccurate, which would become a recurring theme with these ads.
A dolphin discovers underwater treasure, and nobody but the Misfits will believe him.
Episode 7, Steer Crazy. Air date November 29, 1985. When a small asteroid lands on a cattle ranch, its strange radiation contaminates the beef supply, leading to glowing hamburger patties being served at the burger barn. Gloria reports this anomaly to the hit team, but it's already too late. 3 contaminated burgers have already been eaten by regulars Bessie, Irma, and Barney, senior citizens who stopped by the restaurant for lunch. Struggling financially after their Social Security checks mysteriously stop arriving, the trio are already under pressure from their abusive slumlord. But after consuming the irradiated burgers, they begin displaying unexpected side effects. Sudden bursts of strength, renewed vitality, and explosive tempers. Testing at the HIT lab confirms the burgers have dramatically affected the seniors' adrenal glands. Their new abilities include perfect vision, bench pressing 400 pounds, and treadmill speeds exceeding 25 miles per hour. Soon, they're enjoying their newfound youth in a Venice Beach montage, roller skating and weightlifting. However, when Billy and Elle test the burger meat on laboratory mouse Boy Charles, they discover a dangerous side effect: heightened aggression caused by confinement. Meanwhile, the seniors show up at the grand opening of a new nuclear power plant, intending to complain about their missing Social Security money to the governor. Instead, they become trapped in a radioactive steam corridor, triggering the same volatile reactions observed in Boy Charles. The Misfits have to combine their powers to rescue the supercharged seniors before the situation spirals out of control. Written by James D. Perriott, directed by John Tracy. Notable guest operatives: June Allison, 1917 to 2006, as Bessie, a former MGM leading lady of the 1940s who later transitioned into frequent television guest roles. Ida Rice Marin, 1913 to 1998, as Irma, a character actress known for portraying elderly supporting roles across 70s and 80s television. Ray Walston, 1914 to 2001, as Barney. This legendary performer was best known for My Favorite Martian, Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and Picket Fences. Supplemental observations. From the opening scene, a meteor streaking toward Earth, accompanied by a little girl singing Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, to glowing hamburger patties hitting the grill 30 seconds later, we know we're in for a fun episode. One back to the core concept of absurd science leading to wildly entertaining consequences. This episode also delivers the strongest Ghostbusters-style energy yet, with the human investigation team responding to investigate strange phenomena with unnamed scientific equipment. It's easy to imagine this being the tone NBC President Brandon Tartikoff originally envisioned when he pitched the series. The production code 60801 would usually suggest this was the first regular episode filmed, even though Jane being clearly pregnant and eating for two, referenced directly in dialogue, places the events of the episode after Guess What's Coming to Dinner, production code 60802. Almost certainly, the network chose the episode order early enough to adjust dialogue in the first 3 produced episodes. with Dick introducing himself in Your Place or Mine, as well as the pregnancy reveal. Original working script title, Old Folk. The title used references both the 1980 film Stir Crazy, as well as the general phrase that film title is based on. The print ad for this episode didn't reference the senior citizens at all, focusing on the superpowered mouse as the main story, which was really only a subplot. Another interesting detail, the Misfits are still portrayed as publicly famous. The governor invites them to attend the nuclear plant opening, and their arrival is treated as a major event. Gloria's co-workers are also aware of her telekinetic abilities. As the series progresses, this public recognition seemed to quickly fade from the narrative, as evidenced by the first aired episode. Episode 8, Fumble on the One. Air date December 6, 1985. This episode opens as if it were an installment of an entirely different television series, one centered on suave secret agent Brick Tyler. Tyler is stunned to discover that he is in fact bionic, after a group of villains steal the nuclear football he was guarding, along with his detachable bionic hand. Humanidyne had originally performed Brick's bionic conversion, making Billy Hayes uniquely qualified to repair him. But the situation is more complicated than a simple mechanical fix. Before his transformation, Brick had been an overconfident and egotistical operative, a personality that dated back to his college football days with Billy. The trauma of his bionic conversion caused him to psychologically repress his own enhancements. When his missing hand exposes the truth, Brick's carefully constructed self-image collapses. With his confidence shattered, the Misfits accompany Brick to France to retrieve the stolen nuclear device and help him reclaim faith in both his natural abilities and his bionic ones. In the B story, Billy is preoccupied with trying to win money through lottery tickets and gambling in order to cover his overdue rent. Written by Blaze Forrester, directed by Bob Sweeney. Blaze Forrester was a pseudonym used by series creator James D. Perriott, confirmed by both the script cover page and the WGA database. Notable guest operatives: Dale Robinette as Brick Tyler, a TV actor of the 70s and 80s, appearing on soap operas such as The Doctors and Search for Tomorrow. Robinette transitioned to a successful career as a photographer, documenting the production of over 150 films since 1985. Teague Andrews, who lived from 1920 to 2007 as Oscar. This veteran character actor was best known for The Phil Silvers Show and The Detectives. Sid Haig, who lived from 1939 to 2019 as Mr. Mustache. This cult favorite genre actor was remembered for his roles in Jason of Star Command, House of 1,000 Corpses, and The Devil's Rejects. Supplemental observations. The original script title was The $11.4 Million Man. The script also reveals a longer working title, Fumble on the One, or How I Recovered the Football and Almost Saved the Free World. As noted, the episode mimics the structure of another spy adventure series. A brass-heavy James Bond-style theme underscores the action early on, and the story is narrated from beginning to end by an off-screen narrator, a format not used in any other episode. The Mission Impossible theme is even heard multiple times. Brick's bionic upgrades reportedly cost $11.4 million, including his bionic left arm, bionic ear, and both legs. These are all obviously references to The $6 Million Man, a series James D. Perriott had written an episode of. Perriott was also a writer and producer on its spin-off, The Bionic Woman. The bionic ear sound effect here closely resembles the audio cue used for Steve Austin's bionic eye on The $6 Million Man, while the running sound seems to be the classic sound used in both Bionic series. Brick's bionics seem to cover everything except Steve Austin's bionic eye. Other miscellaneous observations: Johnny B's super speed visuals improve here. Instead of simple blue streaks, the color trails now reflect the primary colors of whatever he's wearing. Johnny B also mistakenly refers to Gloria's ability as telepathy rather than telekinesis. This error is even in the script.
Misfits of Science will return.
Uh-oh. The most outrageous science fiction comedy of the summer is here.
What do you call this, Wawa?
My Science Project.
Hey, I seen lights like this at an Ozzy Osbourne concert. What's he saying?
He's going to kick our...
What are we going to do?
About 1 to 5 with good behavior.
It's totally out of control. My Science Project.
Think of the fun.
Rated PG. Now playing in a theater near you.
Meet Chris Knight, the Einstein of the 80s.
What are you doing out there? Floating, sir?
His IQ is higher than most people can count.
Have you ever seen a body like this before in your life? She happens to be my daughter.
Well, then I guess you have.
When they steal his pet project, he turns getting even into a science.
Roger.
Real genius. Rated PG.
Now playing at a theater near you.
Episode 9, Twin Engines. Air date December 13th, 1985. Lonnie McGee, mechanic at a local go-kart track, begins receiving strange visions, flashes of carburetor designs and mechanical ideas he doesn't fully understand. Concerned, Lonnie's friend Johnny B brings him to the human investigation team for evaluation. The visions soon lead the Misfits to a motorcycle racetrack, where they discover an astonishing truth. Lonnie has an identical twin brother he never knew existed. That brother is Dwayne Schott, a famous professional motorcycle racer. Separated at birth, the twins' lives could not have turned out more differently. Lonnie grew up scraping by, while Dwayne became a successful sports star. But Dwayne has recently disappeared. Evidence suggests foul play. Dwayne had been developing a revolutionary fuel-saving carburetor design, a breakthrough that threatened powerful corporate interests. Lonnie assumes Dwayne's identity to keep up appearances while the Misfits investigate. His mysterious visions begin pointing toward Merchco, a powerful corporation with reasons to silence Dwayne permanently. It's up to the Misfits to keep Lonnie from being offed in the race, saving both their lives. In the B story, Gloria continues practicing for her driver's test, to the collective frustration of the entire team. Story by R. Timothy Kring. Teleplay by Donald Todd, directed by Bert Brinkerhoff. R. Timothy Kring would later become widely known as Tim Kring, creator of Strange World, Crossing Jordan, and the NBC hit Heroes. Notable guest operatives: Joel Paulus as Lonnie McGee and Dwayne Schott. This prolific character actor was known for his roles in The Thing, Alien Nation, My Blue Heaven, Home Improvement, and Star Trek Voyager. Appropriately enough for this episode, Paulus is himself an identical twin. Joan Sweeney played Dee Dee Holliday, Dwayne's race team manager. She was known for recurring appearances on After MASH, Hill Street Blues, and political satire Clarity. Paul Koslow, who lived from 1944 to 2019 as Skinner, Dwayne's race team crew member and henchman for Merchco. He was a familiar face across 70s and 80s television, frequently cast as shady or menacing characters. Supplemental observations. The episode's central concept draws on the long-discussed phenomenon of sympathetic twins. Identical twins have often been reported to share unusually strong emotional and psychological bonds, sometimes described as a form of twin telepathy. In the episode, this concept is exaggerated into literal visions, allowing Lonnie to see fragments of his brother's life and experiences. The visions Lonnie receives strongly resemble the intuitive flashes or vibes that Ralph Hinckley would get on The Greatest American Hero. Interestingly, Lonnie's plight in life seemed mostly self-imposed. He was really the co-owner of the go-kart track the whole time, and his experience stepping into Dwayne's shoes led to asserting himself in life. Johnny B's motorcycle receives some screen time here. The character rides a Harley-Davidson XL 1000 Sportster, and Johnny even substitutes for Dwayne during a qualifying run. Mark Thomas Miller later recalled the producers were expanding Johnny B's role due to the character's popularity. That was around the time they were trying to get me to do more, because they realized the character was popular. But I always felt Johnny B worked best in small doses. Of course, the standout detail for this episode is the involvement of Tim Kring, who provided the original story, which was rewritten by Donald Todd, largely as a matter of production necessity, as he told Will Harris for Misfits of Science and Oral History. "We were always in such a hurry. That's one where I took it over from Tim for the rewrite." Kring went on to create several shows, most notably Heroes, airing on NBC for 4 seasons from 2006 to 2010. This series, which arrived at the dawn of the Marvel superhero era of theatrical films, told the stories of seemingly ordinary people who discover they have superhuman abilities and must work together to save the world over a 4-season story arc. But this was the only involvement Kring had with Misfits of Science. Episode 10, Grand Theft Bunny. Air date December 27, 1985. Idealistic lab assistant Sarah, who's never met a cause she didn't support, becomes troubled by the animal experimentation conducted at the laboratory where she works, Vivitech. A former college friend of Billy Hayes, she turns to the Human Investigation Team for help, exposing the research facility's practices. Billy, Elle, and Sarah break into the Vivitech laboratory, strictly to observe, mind you, while proudly wearing their Misfits of Science jackets. Subtle. But the mission is a setup. Billy is caught by security, while Sarah's animal liberation group frees 50 experimental animals and later releases a video manifesto on the evening news. Uh-oh. Vivitech representatives soon arrive at the hit lab with disturbing news. The animals were infected with a virulent disease described as the bubonic plague and the Andromeda strain rolled into one. Among the escaped animals is a single rabbit carrying the only known antidote. Complicating matters, both Johnny B and Sarah have been bitten during the rescue, placing them at risk of infection. Meanwhile, one member of Sarah's activist group, Vince, plans to double-cross the others by selling the animals back to Vivitech scientists Dr. Levine and Dr. Moyer, who secretly intend to unleash the disease on the public and profit from the resulting treatment. Meanwhile, Dick Stepmeyer has bailed Billy out of jail, hiding $30,000 of the bail payment in the budget under the line item office supplies. With multiple factions racing to control the animals and the antidote rabbit, the Misfits must locate Sarah and the infected creatures before the disease spreads. In the B story, Johnny B discovers he has become a magnetic personality, literally. Written by Pamela Norris, directed by Michael Switzer. Pamela Norris previously worked as a writer on Saturday Night Live and later served as executive producer for seasons 3 through 6 of Designing Women. Notable guest operatives: Robin Riker as Sarah, a familiar television face known for roles on Brothers, Get a Life, and soap operas including Days of Our Lives, The Bold and the Beautiful, and General Hospital. Robin Thomas as Vince, a prolific actor with nearly 150 credits, including a multi-year role on Another World. Michael McGuire, who lived from 1930 to 2017 as Dr. Levine. Best remembered by genre fans as Warlock Judah Zachary on Dark Shadows. And Jordan Charney as Dr. Moyer, a soap opera veteran and character actor. Film fans may recognize him as Dean Yeager, the university administrator who shuts down the Ghostbusters research funding in Ghostbusters. Supplemental observations. This episode aired in a special 8/7 Central time slot after NBC temporarily bumped Knight Rider to accommodate the premiere of news magazine Fast Copy. However, going forward, this ended up as the new time slot for the show, as NBC thought it would help ratings to no longer be on against Dallas. The working title for this script? Funny Bunnies. Here, we also get what I think was one of the episode's most satisfying uses of Gloria's telekinesis ever, when she installs 5 lug nuts simultaneously while changing a tire on the ice cream truck, demonstrating just how precise her powers can be when properly motivated. Billy also references 2 very 1985 cultural moments.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one.
The charity single, We Are the World, which dominated radio that summer. And the national campaign to Save Big Boy, when the restaurant chain asked customers whether the mascot should remain. Writer Pam Norris was living at the Burbank Holiday Inn when writing this episode, which made an impression with Donald Todd.
I didn't understand that, but she pointed out to me, look, somebody comes and makes up your room every day, you've got parking, and she sold me on the idea of living in a Holiday Inn. At the time I thought, this is fascinating. I thought you had to have an apartment and dogs and kids, and she's like, no, not really. Burbank Holiday Inn.
Her preference for hotel living made it into the script, as Sarah's fondness for staying at the fictional Happy Day Inn chain. Grand Theft Bunny plays as light popcorn television on the surface. But in a pandemic-era world, the story hits differently. A plot involving infected animals escaping into the public carrying a highly contagious disease no longer feels quite so whimsical. Guest star Robin Riker later recalled being especially excited to work with Dean Paul Martin, having been a fan of his youthful music group, Dino, Desi, and Billy. By the time they worked together on Misfits of Science, both were married, but Riker remembered their on-set flirtation fondly. The following February, she hosted a Valentine's Day party at her home, attended by Courtney Cox, Kevin Peter Hall, and guest actor Robin Thomas. Decades later, she would recount an awkward encounter while auditioning for Courtney Cox's later series, Cougar Town. When she mentioned hosting the Valentine's Day party some 20 years earlier, attended by Cox and the Misfits cast members, Cox responded by asking why Riker had omitted Misfits of Science from her resume.
I said, is it on yours? She was, not amused, I have to say. Not at all amused. She was not exactly warm and fuzzy to me. But, you know, some people are happy to meet somebody who knew them before they were famous, and then other people don't want to ever be reminded that they have not always been famous. So I think maybe that was part of what happened, but I'm not sure. Either way, I didn't get the part on Cougar Town.
Episode 11, Grand Illusion. Air date January 10th, 1986. Nikolai Andreevich, a Russian who defected to the West 12 years earlier during a stage magic show under the nose of KGB agent Galenkov, receives unexpected news. His now adult daughter, Tatiana, is touring the United States as part of an international gymnastics team. Thrilled at the possibility of seeing her again, Nikolai quickly discovers that Galenkov and the KGB are still watching. Dick Stepmeyer grows suspicious that Billy Hayes might inadvertently leak state secrets due to his friendship with Nikolai, as the U.S. government and Soviet intelligence is suddenly interested in Billy's activities. Meanwhile, Johnny B lands a high-profile music gig, performing for the same visiting Russian delegation. What are the chances? Billy's original plan was to arrange a lunch reunion between Nikolai and his daughter, which was immediately shot down by government officials. But when the Misfits stage a secret meet during Billy's rehearsal, events escalate into a full-scale defection when Galinkov is determined to capture Nikolai, with Tatiana as bait. The Misfits respond with the only solution available: go through with an elaborate stage magic bait-and-switch escape act, designed to outwit the KGB and spirit both Nikolai and Tatiana to safety. In the B story, Gloria, newly licensed and newly confident, demands the use of Billy's convertible so she can drive to the prom. Written by Maury Ravensky, directed by Bernard Macavity. Notable guest operatives: James Lawrenson, who lived from 1940 to 2024, as Nikolai Andreevich. He was a New Zealand-born stage actor who worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company in the 1960s. He gained international recognition starring in the Australian series Boney in 1972, based on the Arthur Upfield novels about Aboriginal detective Napoleon Bonaparte. Christy Mossman as Tatiana Andreevich, a frequent guest performer on 1980s television, especially Universal Productions. John Shuck as Galinkov, a familiar TV and film presence, known from Holmes and Yo-Yo, Macmillan and Wife, The New Odd Couple, Star Trek IV, and The Munsters Today. Patricia Wilson, who lived from 1929 to 2021 as Mrs. Willis. This veteran television guest actress had appearances on numerous episodic TV series and stints on Days of Our Lives and Santa Barbara. Here, Mrs. Willis is a telepath whose abilities are being assessed by the hit scientists, and she would be a recurring character. And Arthur Taxier as a KGB agent, known for his roles as Lieutenant Carl Zymak on Midnight Caller and Dr. Morton Chegley on Saint Elsewhere. Supplemental observations. The episode title references La Grande Illusion, the classic 1937 French war film about prisoners planning an escape from a German World War I camp. Johnny B reveals a new ability, manipulating ball lightning, and we see him perform a super speed spin dance with Gloria while celebrating his major music gig. Kevin Peter Hall also gets a memorable moment, dancing enthusiastically to 15-Story Halo. The magician who assisted Nikolai's original 1973 escape was played by real-life magician Nick Lewin, a London-born performer who frequently appeared on television variety programs. Billy's 1965 Dodge Dart convertible makes a rare appearance outside the pilot. And for the first time in the series, the ice cream truck freezer actually contains ice cream, an essential plot point in the episode's escape plan. And yes, this was a Cold War defector story, which seemed to happen quite a bit on 80s TV, with stories involving ballet dancers and gymnasts being the most common. However, the episode works surprisingly well. Much of the credit goes to John Shuck, whose performance as Galinkov lends the story a sense of genuine menace and authority. His gravitas helps ground the more whimsical elements, including the Misfits' powers being used as part of a stage magic routine. Shuck later recalled the production fondly.
The first thing I remember was how very nice Dean Paul Martin was. Extremely professional and easy to talk to. The second was my Russian accent. I might have gotten away with it if they hadn't cast actual Eastern Europeans as my henchmen. My dialect was middle something, but I doubt it fooled anyone.
Episode 12, Once Upon a Night. Air date January 17th, 1986. A mysterious woman infiltrates an embassy and steals an expensive diamond bracelet, then makes her getaway, with Gloria behind the wheel. Is Glow slipping back into her troubled teen phase? Later that night, during an informal birthday celebration for Dick at a local beer joint, 4 drinks in, possibly 5, Gloria introduces her new pen pal, Jay, the same woman from the embassy theft. Johnny B takes the stage to perform Devil with a Blue Dress On, only for Jay to jump in mid-song with a saxophone solo, immediately stealing the spotlight. But something isn't right. Soon a group of Fed-looking agents begin pursuing Jay, triggering a chaotic chase that results in Gloria being kidnapped, Johnny B fleeing with Jay on his motorcycle, and Billy and Elle detained and interrogated by special service agents. The truth emerges. Jay is actually a princess, manipulated into stealing the Windsor bracelet, which rightfully belongs to her, under the false belief that her fiancé had been kidnapped. The real mastermind? Casati, longtime employer of her father, the king. As Johnny B and Jay spend the night tearing across L.A., evading both authorities and assassins, the Misfits must untangle the deception and rescue Gloria, all while Jay's royal obligations threaten to complicate everything. And of course, Johnny B may be developing feelings for her. Written by Linda Campanelli and M.M. Shelley Moore. Directed by Barbara Peters. This marks the first female-led episode team for the series. Campanelli and Moore would go on to write for Newhart, Beauty and the Beast, the 1991 Dark Shadows, and later became staff writers for Sunset Beach and General Hospital. Barbara Peters began directing feature films at age 29, often working for Roger Corman on low-budget exploitation films. She later transitioned to television, directing episodes of Cagney and Lacey, Matt Houston, and Falcon Crest. This is her final IMDb directing credit, before moving to Oregon and shooting TV commercials. As of 2019, she is fully retired. Notable guest operatives: Elaine Wilkes as Princess J, best known for her role as Mary Lou Lassiter on Dallas. Despite appearing older, well, to me anyway, Wilkes is actually a year younger than Courtney Cox. Robert Allen Brown, who lived from 1932 to 2018 as Agent Davis, a familiar background presence across 1980s television, including a regular role on Heart of the City. Joseph Brutzman as Agent Jeff. This Juilliard-trained actor had appearances in Once Bitten and Invaders from Mars. He later became a producer on numerous reality TV shows. And Andrew Massett as Casati, a character actor with nearly 100 credits, including Days of Our Lives. Supplemental observations. Dick Stepmeyer, typically the model of restraint, cuts loose at the beer joint, resulting in some of the series' funniest sequences so far. Later, when contacted by the agents to verify Billy and Elle's Humanidyne credentials, Dick answers the phone in a near-death whisper.
It's my birthday.
Yes, well,
and Lincoln. They did this to me, and then they took my keys.
So you do know them. How do you recommend we deal with them?
Kill them.
Not helpful, Dick. I tracked down a few of those real LA locations they used for filming here. Johnny B and Jay dine at a Bill's Chili Cafe, though the leaning eye on the sign tells us that signage was probably added by the production team. This was actually the Pink Motel and Cafe, a motel and diner in the San Fernando Valley that opened in 1947. This is one of the very few post-war motels along San Fernando Road to survive to the modern day after Interstate 5 opened. With the diner now known as Cadillac Jack's Cafe, it is rented out as a filming location. The property maintains 28 fully restored and functional classic 50s and 60s vehicles to use. The Rockford Files, The Incredible Hulk, Grease 2, 1985's Mischief, Highway to Heaven, Simon & Simon, MacGyver, Murder, She Wrote, Law & Order, and of course, 1982's Pink Motel are some of the dozens of productions to film there. Prior to the current neon sign, the slats on the vertical structure made it easy to redress with signage as needed. And you can still stay at the Pink Motel, which has 7 rooms which have been professionally designed and customized to recreate the 50s and 60s era. Another location includes Bud's Red Hots in North Hollywood, a well-known burger stand that operated for decades before closing in the late 1990s due to the MTA Orange Line project. The episode also captures a 1985 snapshot of Shoreline Village and Queensway Bay in Long Beach, where the climax unfolds. This episode is a clear homage to the 1985 film Into the Night, right down to the structure with a male protagonist pulled into the dangerous world of a mysterious woman on the run, stolen jewels, and a citywide chase unfolding over a single night. Even Jay's character styling, especially the red jacket, which becomes a plot point, echoes Michelle Pfeiffer's character in the film. The result is essentially a Misfits-flavored urban chase movie, giving the episode a different structure from the rest of the series, shot entirely on location with no scenes at Humanidyne. Guest actor Andrew Massett recalled filming the climactic helicopter sequence in Long Beach on a particularly cold day, with his stunt double performing a jump into the Queensway Bay. He also clearly remembered the cast dynamic.
I remember Courtney Cox asking if she would still be breathing if she was under. I told her, "Sweetheart, you're drugged, not dead." I fell in love with her instantly.
He also noted that Dean Paul Martin seemed somewhat uneasy during filming, remarking over lunch that his true passion was flying, a detail that takes on a deeper, tragic meaning in hindsight. Episode postscript. Here's a detail you'll find nowhere else. The following week, NBC had originally scheduled the next new episode, Center of Attention, to air on January 24th, 1986. Instead, the network preempted Misfits of Science entirely in favor of Disney's Living Seas, filmed at Epcot Center, which pushed that new episode to January 31st. According to recollections from Donald Todd and James Perriott, NBC had originally planned to rerun the Space Shuttle-themed episode Lost Link on January 31st. But with the schedule reshuffled, that rerun never happened. But it likely wouldn't have aired anyway. Just 3 days earlier, on January 28, 1986, the Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds into flight, killing all 7 crew members. Donald Todd recalled the moment vividly.
"Jim, you've got to turn on your TV now."
As the production team watched the disaster unfold in real time, the realization hit.
Oh my God, our episode.
A routine scheduling change had inadvertently kept the Space Shuttle-themed episode off the air in the immediate aftermath of one of NASA's and America's darkest days. Episode 13, Center of Attention, air date January 31st, 1986. Billy and Elle attend an LA Wolves game, where Elle's old friend Derek the Fly Avery has developed an unfortunate reputation. Whenever he takes the court, disaster strikes. Now dubbed the Jinx, Avery's string of bad luck becomes so severe that Billy and Elle bring him to the hit lab to determine if there's a scientific explanation. Testing escalates quickly. Gloria uses her telekinesis to enhance Elle's basketball ability, temporarily transforming him into a viable player. The result? Elle is drafted onto the Wolves roster. But when Johnny B witnesses a suspicious payoff involving team owner Eddie Buxton, the Misfits uncover a scheme. Games are being deliberately thrown, with Avery's Jinx serving as the perfect scapegoat. The team moves to expose Buxton, culminating in a final game where Gloria levels the playing field, allowing Elle's shot to decide the outcome. All this has Billy rekindle his love of basketball, reviving plans for a hit team with a new name, the Hit Beakers. Instead of a traditional B-story, the episode is framed by an unusual subplot. Dick Stepmeyer is summoned before a mysterious board of executives, demanding answers about the Misfits of Science. Written by Sarah Perriott, directed by Burt Brinkerhoff. Sarah Perriott, sister of series creator James D. Perriott, previously wrote the final episode of Voyagers. She later became a successful screenwriter, with credits Three Men and a Little Lady and Runaway Bride, and co-creator of the Descendants franchise. Notable guest operatives: Wolf Perry as Derek Avery, former NBA draft pick, Utah Jazz, 1979, best known as Teddy Rutherford on The White Shadow. Warren Berlinger lived 1937 to 2020 as Coach Sonny Tyler, a veteran character actor with a 50-year television career. He had regular roles on The Joey Bishop Show, A Touch of Grace, and Operation Petticoat. Barry Saddles as Eddie Buxton. He had recurring roles on Cagney and Lacey and various soap operas and low-budget films. Liam Sullivan, who lived from 1923 to 1998 as the Mysterious Executive, recognizable to Star Trek fans as Parman from Plato's Stepchildren, who mentally forced Kirk and Uhura and Spock and Chapel to kiss while bullying the diminutive Alexander. Supplemental observations. This marks another return to one of the show's earliest concepts, Billy's love of basketball, which originally inspired the name Misfits of Science for a hit team. Kevin Peter Hall's real-life lack of basketball skill was incorporated into Elle's character background and plays directly into this episode's premise. Here, very late in the show's run, the plot device of Gloria being blindfolded to neutralize her powers is introduced by a pair of extremely observant security guards. These guards also identify Johnny B's vulnerability to water suspiciously quickly over a security video feed. Following the prior week's preemption, the series now enters the final 3 original airings, and almost certainly the final 3 produced following the original network order, according to the available production codes. According to Jim Perriott, the show's original order was expanded by NBC in small increments, a sign that confidence was waning, but also of Brandon Tartikoff likely being reluctant to cancel the show outright. Production numbers suggest this was the last of a 2-episode order before a final single order. But the episode's most unusual element is the odd star chamber framing device. Dick Stepmeyer being interrogated by unknown executives. These scenes feel tonally disconnected and appear almost certainly added late in production. The episode ending is presented as a serious postscript after the traditional humorous freeze frame. After presenting the Misfits concept to the never-named mysterious executive board, Dick exits the room, turns directly to the camera, and says,
"They didn't get it."
This moment breaks the fourth wall and reflects a deeper reality. Whether aimed at network executives that didn't have the last name of Tartikoff, or the audience itself, the message is clear. The producers knew the show was not being understood. With ratings slipping even further after a time slot change, reportedly ranking 60th out of 71 programs on the air, and not knowing if any more episode orders were coming, my take was that this was basically a goodbye to the audience, with producers sadly knowing the writing was on the wall. In a reply to Forgotten TV by none other than James Perriott, he noted that the Star Chamber scenes were shot in a single day. He also added, "As far as Dick's fourth wall break, the comment was more for the general public than the executives. They didn't get it, or perhaps even like it,
and the show failed.
Watching the book end after realizing these details, the scene lands with unexpected emotional weight. Episode 14, Against All Odds. Air date February 7th, 1986. Chaos reigns at the Hit Lab. Billy Hayes hasn't slept in 2 days. Experiments are running wild. Johnny B has rock music blasting. Elle is dealing with a ceiling leak. Gloria needs help with an application. Dick is demanding reports, and Mrs. Willis has arrived while Miss Nance is naturally late. Overwhelmed, Billy collapses for a quick nap and wakes up somewhere else. In this alternate reality, the Hit Lab has become the highly structured NIT, or Nuclear Investigation Team, a polished, well-funded operation staffed by sharply dressed professionals. Everything is wrong. Elle, that's Dr. Lincoln, runs the lab, has 2 girlfriends, and is a skilled basketball player. Dick is a crude, womanizing janitor. Miss Nance is the high-powered executive in charge. Johnny B is an asthmatic IT technician who prefers easy-listening music. And Gloria is the security chief on a power trip. Even more troubling, this version of Humanidyne is developing the most powerful nuclear weapon ever created. As Billy tries to make sense of this inverted reality, recounting memories via flashback of the world he knows, the situation escalates toward catastrophe. Only by rallying this alternate team can he stop the weapon from detonating. Billy awakens back in the real, now calmer Hit Lab, just in time to deliver the report Dick has been demanding. But there's something oddly familiar about Elle's new vacuum cleaner. Written by Maury Ravensky, directed by Michael Switzer. Supplemental Observations. The title references both The Wizard of Oz and 1984 film Against All Odds, though the latter's iconic Phil Collins track is notably absent. Mrs. Willis makes a return, now appearing to possess precognition in addition to telepathy, moving her chair moments before a beaker shatters where she had been sitting. Alternate Elle boasts of being a basketball star at George Washington University, mirroring Kevin Peter Hall's real-life background. A close inspection of the flashbacks reveals something fascinating. Many clips are not identical to their original episodes. Differences include alternate dialogue, different takes, music changes, and previously unseen footage. Most notably, any dialogue from Lost Link referencing the space shuttle was altered to rocket, undoubtedly due to the Challenger disaster which had just occurred 10 days earlier. The Science of Misfits blog has the full list of the changes. And this episode combines 3 classic television cost-saving strategies. First is the bottle episode, where the action takes place on existing sets. Star Trek was known for this, where the story takes place entirely on the Enterprise or a ship identical to it. Here, all the action took place in the Hit Lab, and its counterpart, the NIT Lab, dressed up with some additional computer banks. According to David J. Shaw and Jeffrey Frinson, the term bottle show was coined by Leslie Stevens, creator of The Outer Limits and Search. Scroll back to the podcasts on Leslie Stevens for more information on that. The clip show is another production tool used to save money. Here an episode will consist primarily of clips from previous episodes, typically with some kind of framing device to set these up. These are typically done late in a season, when earlier episodes went over budget. The "it was all a dream" trope was also used, where, for a single episode, a character typically exists in a world alternate to the one in the main continuity of the show, something done on numerous episodes of TV of this era. As clip shows go, it was better than some. It was fun seeing our characters out of character, but it was surprising to see a clip show at all for such a short-run series. Production context explains why. By this point, earlier episodes had strained the budget, especially the more ambitious outings like Your Place or Mayan, which had the expensive, underground Mayan temple set. Series creator James Perriott summarized it bluntly, telling Forgotten TV, "It was simply a way of saving money." Wait until you hear what that meant for what would have been the final NBC episode. The following week, February 14th, Misfits of Science was preempted by DTV Valentine, a music video take of classic Disney cartoon clips set to modern popular songs. This left just one more episode in the original broadcast run, airing February 21st. Episode 15, The Avenging Angel, air date February 21st, 1986. While Elle enjoys a televised wrestling match, much to Billy's disdain, calling it Theater of the Stupid, Johnny B and Gloria attend the event in person. Enter Milt, a mild-mannered arena janitor with dreams of becoming a heroic wrestling figure, a good guy champion of the underdog. Those dreams take a dangerous turn when mob enforcers assault kindly hot dog stand operators Nate and Hetty. Milt attempts to intervene, receiving an unseen assist from Gloria's telekinesis. As a result, Milt becomes convinced he possesses extraordinary abilities. Now fully embracing his new identity as the Avenging Angel, Milt launches into crime fighting, with Glow accidentally repeating the illusion. Unfortunately, the mob takes notice. As tensions escalate and a mob protection racket on top of wrestling match fixing is uncovered, the Misfits must intervene before Milt's delusion gets him seriously hurt. But it's Gloria who faces the dilemma of telling Milt the truth about his newfound abilities. In the B story, Dick is perturbed by a huge experiment taking over the Hit Lab, involving dogs and their owners, resulting in a flea infestation and a battle with the health department. Written by Dan DiStefano, directed by Bernard Macavity. We've run into Dan DiStefano before. His resume includes a wide range of 80s animation staples, including Mr. T, Beetlejuice, and The Karate Kid. Notable guest operatives: Vic Polizos as Milt, a frequent supporting actor across 80s and 90s TV, later appearing in Who's the Boss, Boston Legal, and Jericho. Recently, a voice actor on podcasts Exeter and The Montauk Caves. Wolf Muser lived from 1950 to 2022 as Albert the Mob Enforcer. He was a recurring presence on Santa Barbara, and later, Adam Ruins Everything. Dave Shelley lived from 1931 to 1989 as Mr. Rogers, the mob boss. He was a TV supporting player of the 70s and 80s, and this marked his final screen role. Jimmy Lydon, 1923 to 2022, and Ivy Bethune, 1918 to 2019, as Nate and Hetty. These were veteran character actors. Lydon was a Broadway actor and a contract player for Paramount and RKO in the 1940s. This was his second to final credit before retiring. Bethune had regular and recurring roles on Father Murphy and General Hospital, and also appeared as Ma Peabody in Back to the Future. Jack Wildman Armstrong played the wrestler Bates Motel. He was a real-life professional wrestler with WWE and a frequent TV performer. Bobby Jacoby as the Tough Kid, recognizable from Different Strokes, Small Wonder, and Tremors. Bobby is brother of actor Billy Jacoby from The Beastmaster and Just One of the Guys, who now goes by his original last name, Jane. And Patricia Wilson as Mrs. Willis returns with expanded prominence, now clearly positioned as a recurring character with a broad range of ESP abilities. Supplemental observations. The episode opens with a fake wrestling broadcast cold open, reminding me very much of the WizKids episode Return of the Big Rocker, which opens much the same way with the NASCorp commercial for the Bobby Lee Jans album. This episode pushes the physical stakes further than usual, with Billy and Glow both violently knocked unconscious with a blackjack. Glow then has the plot contrivance of having her eyes taped shut here, preventing her from using her TK. Remember in Center of Attention, where she could just open her eyes and see the blindfold to push it off. She does, however, discover she can use her TK with just one eye. And time for a forgotten TV crossover detail. The establishing shot used for the downtown arena matches the one seen in Street Hawk for Norman Tuttle's command center, located in what used to be the 500 block of Banning Street in the old industrial part of Los Angeles. These buildings and this portion of the street itself no longer exist, as they were demolished around 1999. This is now a set of parking lots behind expanded buildings for the LA Fire Department Station 4 and the Emergency Operations Center on East Temple Street. Yes, this means I was one street over from nailing the accurate location for the Street Hawk podcast, not realizing at the time that Banning Street used to extend further. Here in the Misfits episode, when they cut to our characters, we're clearly on the Universal backlot. The exact same establishing shot used here, now in HD, is available to be licensed from Getty Images. And here we are. The final episode aired during the original NBC run. Unfortunately, it doesn't feel like one. The episode revisits familiar ground with yet another sports-adjacent story, another scenario where Gloria levels the playing field, and another underdog narrative resolved through the Misfits' intervention. Coming just 3 weeks after Center of Attention, this repetition is noticeable. Billy comes across unusually condescending here. And even more surprising, the show repeats the alternate reality dream device used in the previous episode, this time with Billy imagining himself as a chicken-themed wrestler. It's funny, but it takes up an incredible 4 minutes of runtime. So, although there are some enjoyable moments here, especially at the end, where we are given a whole scene with Mrs. Willis participating in the wrap-up and even getting the final line and sharing the freeze frame with Billy, the episode obviously lacks any sense of closure. And that's because this clearly wasn't written to be the final episode of the season. Remember that episodes at this point were being ordered piecemeal, with the production unaware of just when no more orders would be coming. My guess is they also had no idea which one NBC would air last. Perriott thus inserted his goodbye bookend on one of the final produced episodes, perhaps guessing which one would air last. And despite modern online episode guides citing a February 28th airing of 3 Days of the Blender, that episode never broadcast on NBC. Instead, NBC re-aired the 2-hour Knight Rider, Night of the Juggernaut, where Kid is nearly destroyed and is remade with Super Pursuit Mode and the C button, turning Kit into an absurd hardtop convertible, a development that even at age 17, and we didn't yet have a term for it, made me realize that show had jumped the shark. Misfits of Science thus disappeared from the NBC schedule with no fanfare. But now, through the magic of YouTube or those overseas DVD releases, viewers can now watch the final episode. Episode 16, 3 Days of the Blender, originally unaired. Here, another episode opens in the style of a completely different show, this time clearly evoking Hill Street Blues, before pulling back to reveal Billy Hayes in prison. From there, the episode shifts into a full news magazine documentary, presented as an installment of Close-Up News, hosted by investigative journalist Jerry McDermott. Through interviews and reconstructed footage, we learn what happened leading up to this. Billy had begun noticing increased paranoia at Humanidyne. New phone system, new security, new guards. Unknown to him, this was part of a months-long federal investigation to identify a supposed security leak. Then came the blender. A gift from his mother sent years earlier was suddenly confiscated by security. It's later revealed that the appliance contained a classified defense computer chip mistakenly used in its manufacture. Through a combination of misinterpreted interviews, surveillance, and bad timing, Billy is framed as paranoid, then as suspicious. A crucial mistake seals his fate. Billy overhears Agents Jasper and Henrati discussing the blender as bait to flush out a spy, but he misreads the situation entirely. Soon, suspicion falls inward. Billy suspects Dick, Dick suspects Billy. When Agent Jasper plants the blender in Dick's office, events spiral into a chaotic confrontation at the Starlight Bowling Alley, ending in Billy's arrest, believing he is protecting his friend. But the truth is worse. Elle and Johnny B discover through yet another telephone mix-up that the entire FBI investigation was based on a mistake, and there never was any security leak. While Dick attempts yet another bowling alley meet to trap the real spy, Jasper sets out to trap Dick, needing someone to blame for the months of wasted investigative effort. This time, the Misfits intervene, breaking Billy out and exposing Jasper. And then, in a final twist, the entire affair is revealed to be under discussion by none other than Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev over dinner, suggesting a much larger geopolitical game at play that may one day have implications for Billy Hayes and his associates. Written by Donald Todd, directed by Michael Switzer. Notable guest operatives: Doug Hale, who lived from 1940 to 2014 as Jerry McDermott. He often played TV reporters, as he did on The Incredible Hulk, The Greatest American Hero, Streets of Justice, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, Scarecrow and Mrs. King, Weird Science, and The West Wing. He was also the voice of the Enterprise computer in Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Doug wore it as Agent Hanratty. This character actor was notable for 1983's Christine. He now teaches acting classes, specializing in cold reading and audition techniques. Joe Dorsey as Agent Jasper. This frequent authority figure actor appeared in War Games, Real Genius, and The Philadelphia Experiment. And Meg Wiley, who lived from 1917 to 2002 as Mrs. Ruth Hayes. She replaces Kathleen O'Malley from the original telefilm. This longtime character actor had stints on Days of Our Lives and General Hospital, but you might know her as the Telosian Keeper in Star Trek's original pilot, The Cage. Supplemental observations. The episode title references 1975's 3 Days of the Condor, which is appropriate as this episode leans heavily into conspiracy and espionage themes. This installment also adopts the classic documentary episode structure, a well-established television trope in which the events of the series are reframed through an in-universe media lens. The result is a narrative that both examines and distorts the world of the show. Examples of period TV that used this include The Facts of Life, Hill Street Blues, WKRP in Cincinnati, The X-Files, and of course, MASH, in likely the best example of this being done. A notable production anecdote from guest star Doug Hale notes the time a Universal Tour tram driver introduced Dean Paul Martin as one of the stars of Misfits of Science, but he didn't know who the I was. Dean walked over and very affably was giving whoever asked for it an autograph. And then one of the ladies who was urging something into his hand looked at me and said, "Hey, who are you?" And I said, "My name is Doug Hale." She said,
Well, I'm sure you're gonna be a star too. Come over here and sign my book. Max Wright also continues to shine here. His performance balancing suspicion, frustration, and comedy is a reminder of how much range he had as an actor. But despite the high concept structure, the episode still doesn't fully feel like a finale, but it still works. Beyond the documentary trope, the conclusion hints at something bigger. That final reveal, placing the global superpowers in awareness of the Misfits, suggests a larger narrative that never came to be. A second season could certainly have explored this. Instead, the show ends here. Mid-idea, mid-momentum, seemingly right as the series was starting to gel as a concept, even if it strayed a bit from what Tartikoff had initially envisioned. Episode Postscript. Following the airing of Center of Attention, and only a couple of days before Against All Odds aired, NBC had announced the show was being placed on hiatus, often a euphemistic status miniseries do not return from. Behind the scenes, the truth was already known. Ahead of telling the crew, the studio had reduced the number of filming days from 7 to 6. Studio and network people then showed up for the final scenes to be shot. As Donald Todd recalled, "I thought, oh, that's interesting. They're really interested in our episode. No, they just came to say goodbye to everybody." James Perriott confirmed, "I got the phone call, and then I had to go down to the set and hang around, and then finally say, okay guys, that's it. It's sad. I hate doing that. Pulling the plug is always really hard. Really, really hard." But what was worse is that Universal initially refused to pay for post-production on this episode, as the show had been canceled. This was either due simply to budgetary concerns, or because NBC had informed them they were not going to air it. Todd tried to sneak it through post on other Universal shows, seemingly to no success. "I begged people on different shows to get it through the post process because it was such a good episode. I loved that episode. We tried some things. It was really bizarre, and I think somebody in a post house got me a tape of it years later." Todd moved on to his next project. More on that in a minute, leaving Misfits behind. But someone at Universal finally made the call to finish post-production on the episode, as, if TV listings can be trusted, it aired overseas as early as late 1986, even though it was not shown in the U.S. until the Sci-Fi Channel airings in 1993.
You are watching the Sci-Fi Channel.
At the May 1986 upfronts, when fall schedules were announced, Misfits of Science was missing, now officially canceled by NBC, along with Remington Steele, Knight Rider, Silver Spoons, Punky Brewster, Fathers and Sons, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, TV's Bloopers and Practical Jokes, Riptide, and Helltown. But some of the creative talent from Misfits would resurface almost immediately on a very different kind of show. Among NBC's new fall offerings was a high-concept sitcom, considered to be a risky play from Brandon Tartikoff. One of the writers of this new series would be Donald Todd. Burt Brinkerhoff would be a regular director, and Eric Christmas, Mickey Jones, and Diane Savita would all make guest appearances. This new series told the story of an alien life form who crash lands in a suburban garage and becomes a permanent disruption in the life of high-strung father Willie Tanner. The show, of course, was Alf, which would be an NBC hit on Monday nights for 4 seasons. And Willie Tanner would be played by none other than the talented Max Wright. You've been listening to the Misfits of Science Declassified episode files, but the full dossiers go even deeper. On Patreon, you'll find expanded write-ups for every episode,
featuring additional details that didn't make it into this podcast, including screenshots, the original print ads, breakdowns of the lab rats, and Weirdo of the Week background gags, and a complete audio surveillance log for every episode. All 16 files are available to all paid supporters or as a standalone collection. But wait, class is not yet dismissed, as this was the show too big for just one podcast. Stay tuned, as next time we go behind the scenes. We'll dig further into the origins of the show, the casting, filming locations,
You can rent Billy and Elle's beach house,
production tidbits, and more. You'll hear how Steve Schiff and Basil Polidouris created the Feels Like Science theme, what happened to the cast after the show, and the real-world stories that followed, including the tragic early losses of Dean Paul Martin and Kevin Peter Hall. We'll also explore the show's afterlife, from overseas broadcasts to its rediscovery on the Sci-Fi Channel, to the modern revival of interest through the Science of Misfits blog and the 2013 oral history. The heat is on as we continue to dodge Humanidyne and go behind the scenes. They didn't get it, but you will. Next time on Forgotten TV. Forgotten TV is brought to you by executive producers Joshua Driscoll, Doc Pinko, K.L. Young, Kenny Siegel, Tony Cook, James Bellinger, and Leland Duggar. With producers Julio Capa, Ron Sorrell, Trevor Pearson, Tim Yabo, Lee Goldberg, Eric Fusco, Ralph Caracio, and John Malcolm. And of course, thanks to all who support at the $1 to $3 levels on Patreon. I'm sorry you had to wait so long for this installment, but I promise you will not have to wait 4 months for the next podcast. And be sure to check out the Forgotten TV merch store at Fourth Wall, where you might find some scientific goodies dropping soon. Link in the show notes. Also check out promotional partner Q106.5.
Discover the legendary Q106.5 in your car, on your smart speaker, on your phone. Browse to Q1065.com. 80s, 90s. This is a radio station with a vibe. Download our app or listen online. Search at Q1065 Radio on social media. The Q is your favorite radio station. Discover Q106.5 and hear the 80s and 90s hits on the radio station with personality. Q106.5.
Forgotten TV is not affiliated with or authorized by NBC, Universal Television, James D. Perriott Productions, or any production company or network involved in the making of any TV show or film mentioned in this podcast. Links to Amazon are affiliate, and as an Amazon associate, Forgotten TV earns royalties from qualifying purchases made. All characters, films, and series mentioned are the property of their respective copyright holders, and no infringement is intended. Audio clips included are for the purposes of historical context, review, commentary, and criticism only, and are not intended to infringe. Additional audio used under license by Epidemic Sound. If you need music for your podcast or YouTube channel, check out Epidemic Sound. Link in the show notes. This podcast is copyright 2026 Forgotten TV Media. The views and opinions expressed by guests and quoted sources are their own and may not reflect the opinion of Forgotten TV Media, its patrons, or any future sponsors. This podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. Information presented is based on a combination of interviews, published works in period news media, and high-quality online sources. Forgotten TV Media cannot guarantee the accuracy of every detail included and makes no representations or warranties for the content in this podcast and cannot be held liable for errors or omissions. And I'd like to thank some of those YouTube channels for making some of that audio possible. JM Third Base, Movie Soundtrack, Slick's Film Soundtracks, Fast Movie Scenes, Graham's Commercials, George is Dope, USA for Africa, Scores de Scene, ABC Martin Fry, Sam's Archive, and the channels that have Misfits of Science episodes, series, and Dustin Ochoa. And a special thanks to Jason Larson for the fantastic color-corrected and upscaled version of Deep Freeze. This episode builds on research done by Popdose writer Will Harris for his Misfits of Science and Oral History, available in book form, link in the show notes. And the Misfits of Science blog by Joanna Magnolia and all the contributors at scienceofmisfits.blogspot.com, as well as the Fire and Water Podcast Network, the WGA Directory, 101soundboards.com, and period newspaper articles at newspapers.com. Thank you for listening. Be sure and bookmark forgotten.tv for all content and links. I am your writer, producer, and host, Chris Cooling, and this has been Forgotten TV.
Good night, bunnies.
It is God.